Dust off that Clemson scouting report, give it a little adjustment tweak here and there, and you should be all set for about 10 days from now. Ohio State Buckeyes Live. It comes your way every Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Got Kevin Noon next to me from Rivals Buckeye Grove. Steve Hellwagon, senior Big Ten writer or Big Ten senior writer. I don't know which one it is, but I think they're both just as impressive from 247 Sports Bucknuts, and Tony Gertman, Buckeye Scoop. Boys, how are we doing today?
Pretty good.
Hanging in there.
I understand it doesn't doing well. Good. There's a team I understand. I keep talking to people and having them let me know that there's a team that does not belong in the playoff, and it's not Notre Dame.
I think Alabama belongs. I mean, I don't know why people are so critical of them. I mean, Bama belongs.
They had a good year.
The defense looked awful against Florida. They should have just gotten dumped right out of the thing.
Ole Miss, too.
Ole Miss, can't have it. Get them out of there. Clemson, they lost a game, too. And they lost to a team that lost by 24 points in their conference championship game.
It's crazy.
So it's good to know that Ohio State's firmly entrenched. The other ones we could squabble about, I guess. All right, Steve, we'll start with you. Ohio State played 6 games. So Jimbo Fisher, all up in arms because they played 6 games. Well, maybe Dabo and Saban could say, well, we played 11. They only played 9. What's the difference? Okay, there's a 3-game difference, 2-game difference. What was supposed to be the magic number? Was there some kind of magic number that I missed?
No, I don't think so. And I think it's much to do about nothing. I think everybody knew when the season started that it was not going to be a perfect scenario. And I think what played out, obviously people are going to blame the Big Ten for starting late. And then there were events that were outside Ohio State's purview, and that 2 schools canceled on them and kind of left them holding the bag. And let's be all honesty here. The 3 games that Ohio State missed, a 20-point win over Maryland and 30-point wins over Michigan and Illinois, weren't going to tell you or show you or prove anything to anybody that they were any different or better than what they showed in the 6 games. It's just they would have played 3 more games and risked injuries in 3 more games. And there's a push-pull to this. I mean, Clemson played 11 games. They're in a rhythm. They put their guys out there for 11 games and risked injuries, whereas Ohio State only risked injuries for 6 games. And Ohio State's 6 games were disjointed, 1 here, then 2 weeks off, then 1 there. And 18 of your 22 starters are available 1 game, and 17 of your 22 starters the next game, and didn't practice together a whole lot with your whole team and everything. So, look, all those talking points and everything don't mean a hill of beans on January the 1st. It's who shows up, who wants it more, and who plays better when Clemson plays Ohio State in the semifinals for a shot at the national championship. And really, that's all water under the bridge at this point. And, Ohio State, again, were they the 4th best team? Well, actually, they go in as the 3rd seed because the committee downrated Notre Dame after their lopsided loss and made them the 4th seed, and they have to play Alabama. I think some of that was intentional to avoid a 3rd scheduled Clemson Notre Dame game. Nobody really needed or wanted to see that, but everyone was of the agreement that Notre Dame should be in the playoff, and yet everybody looks at Ohio State as the one that should be the odd one out. Dabo Swinney not happy about it. Certainly Jimbo Fisher not happy about it. Iowa State, Cincinnati had a beef, whatever. So, whatever. People want an 8-team playoff. I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think that, hey, we knew 2020 season was not going to be perfect. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened, kind of an imperfect finish to an imperfect year.
I'd like to let everyone know out there that Steve is usually perfect and completely accurate on everything he says, except one thing here. It's not all water under the bridge, because I have yet to produce a video in which I got the resumes of Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma right here, and I just haven't had the chance to post the video. So it's not all water under the bridge because I need everyone to watch my videos.
Okay.
Kevin, about the Buckeyes argument in all this.
Yeah, it would have been great if Ohio State could have played 9 games, 8+1, but that still wouldn't have been 10 or 11. So there would still be the grousing right now. There would still be the Big Ten ain't no good. I mean, we've already kind of seen that. David Pollock came out and, I agree with some of the stuff he said there, but I don't know if I fully agree with it. How the Big Ten didn't win a single non-conference game. The Big Ten didn't play a single non-conference game. Big Ten's record this season was 500 because, somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. I think the Big Ten certainly didn't do Ohio State a lot of favors on the front end. A lot of people will say that the Big Ten did Ohio State some favors in the end when it allowed Ohio State into the Big Ten championship game. I'm still waiting to see, have we ever seen an official release on the 17-day coronavirus policy yet? I mean, it had been much talked about, but I don't know if I've ever seen anything officially official yet at this point. But, Ohio State did what was asked of it. It won the games that was on its schedule. And, I'm hearing all of this talk about Ohio State not looking so hot against Northwestern or whatnot and how bad it looked against Indiana. Well, Ohio State looked really good at 35-7 against Indiana and then fell apart. So when I hear these national talking heads talk about how Justin Fields looked like garbage in that game, that is intellectually false. And then when you look at the Northwestern game, and Ohio State was down 20-some players, and granted, some of them were not contributors. Some of them were not out because of coronavirus. But when you don't have Chris Olave, when you don't have Baron Browning, to a lesser extent, Drew Chrisman, even though, his backup, Zach Hoover, played very well, I think there's some special circumstances there. 6, 10, 20 games isn't really going to matter. It's going to be who brings it on January 1st. And, when it comes down to it, I'm sure we'll have one more show before before the semifinal game. I don't think this Clemson team is as good as last year's Clemson team. I don't think this Ohio State team is as good as last year's Ohio State team. So it's just going to be who brings it that night.
Yeah, I think if Jimbo has a problem, shouldn't he talk to the team in front of him in the rankings? Shouldn't his issue be with Notre Dame instead of Ohio State? Shouldn't he be comparing those two teams? But, I'm with Kevin. We've seen complaints when one team doesn't play in a conference championship game that they haven't done enough. So whether Ohio State would have played 9 as opposed to somebody else playing 11, that still would have been an issue. Or before the season, Dabo said that, however many games you play doesn't matter. You just want the best 4 teams in there. And now that Ohio State is one of the best 4 teams, but only having played 6 games, now he's got an issue with that. And I'm not surprised anytime coaches complain about Ohio State or the Big Ten or anything that they are doing. I guess it's transparent because you can see right through what they're trying to do. And then for Dabo to vote Ohio State 11th, at least he is being consistent with his view on Ohio, not knowing much about Ohio State because you haven't seen enough of them. And so you've seen more of other teams. So obviously those teams are better. And as we know, the more games you play, the better you are. And there are many more teams with 6 wins than Ohio State. So those teams all must be better than Ohio State, despite what the Buckeyes look like this year. And it's been interesting to see Dabo and then Kevin Wilson taking a swipe on Twitter about how he spent his wedding anniversary scouting the Citadel game because of Clemson's rigorous schedule and scouting all of the opponents that Clemson has played in and just watching the Citadel tape. And you can give Ohio State Maryland, you can give them Michigan, you can give them whatever, and they're still going to do what they did, and nothing would have changed. And the Ohio State coaches want this game really, really badly because there's been not a lot of filter going on right now in terms of what coaches say or what players are saying. So it will be a big win for the Buckeyes if they can get it. If not, they're going to be I think almost angrier than they were last year.
I've got 3 journalists here. I'm no longer one. Haven't been one for a long time, but I would like to hear one of these coaches get challenged when they make this comment about the games played. And obviously they're talking about Ohio State, none of them. And when I say none, I'm talking Saban, Fisher, and Sweeney. Name the name Ohio State, but we know who they're talking about. They're never asked the follow-up question of, put yourself in this position. You played 6 games, you went undefeated, you won a conference championship. Would you be politicking, or would you be, making the argument for your team? I can't imagine that it wouldn't be exactly the same. Of course.
Naturally.
And they could deny that all they want, and we'll never know. Hopefully we'll never know, because we'll never have to go through this again. But I think at least people could see through that and say, yeah, Dabo Sweeney, 6-0 conference champ. Like, he's not saying, yeah, we deserve to be in the playoff. So the other thing in this is that there's certain teams that Ohio State plays, particularly from the Big Ten West, that they just can't win in regards to public perception. Northwestern's Northwestern. Northwestern could win 50 games in a row, and there's certain people that are going to have the same perception about Northwestern and how good or bad they are. And so Ohio State, if they go out there and drub Northwestern, let's pick one of your 3 scores. I think you guys were a little
million
on the high there. I said 34-17, so I was a little bit more in
We
range.
don't need to bring that stuff up, Mark. Don't
All
go
right,
there.
all right.
Beating
As John Cooper used to say, now you're too dang negative. You're too dang negative.
beating Northwestern will never be as good as beating Duke or Vandy. Come on.
So exactly, Northwestern they are legitimately one of the best 15 teams in the country. I believe that, and their resume speaks to that. But Ohio State can't win there, because if they blow them out, then Northwestern wasn't any good. You should have beat them 52-10. If they struggle and have a fight, and it becomes the game that it did, then it's, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, and Mark, the other thing I want to bring up is, this being Ohio State's 6th game, I went back, and Clemson's 6th game was, I believe, the win over Syracuse, in which they were up by 6 late in the 3rd quarter. And Dabo said that this past game against Notre Dame was their best game of the season, meaning they have gotten better and had chances to get better and time to get better. Ohio State now enters their 7th game. The 7th game for Clemson this past season was Boston College. And we remember what happened there, where Boston College was up by like 18 before Clemson turned it around. So the idea that Ohio State has some advantage by playing fewer games is incorrect. It just means they've had fewer opportunities to lose games that they wouldn't have lost, but they've had much less opportunity to be as good as they would be after 12 games. Ryan Day has said they have not played their best game yet. Clemson just did, and Dabo admitted it.
And Steve, that's the other good argument that's out there, is most of this argument falls on the side of Ohio State's got this huge advantage. They're fresh. They've only had to play 6 games. And yes, the less games you play, the less you're nicked up, the less chance that there's a major injury. But to Tony's point, you need reps. You're a football team that's played 2 games, then you're off. Then you played a couple of games, you're off. And they played, of course, last week, but they were off the week before. They just have not gotten that chance to get the reps and get into sync like the team that they're going to play here in the playoff.
Yeah, I think you could definitely make that case that Clemson is favored because of that, just because they're in more of a weekly groove or a grind. And they played great football once they got Trevor Lawrence back. They weren't threatened pretty much down the stretch. They did some really great things here the last 3 or 4 weeks. So when they were able to get on the field, they did not play the week before the Notre Dame game this past week, but prior to that, they were doing very well. So I do understand where everybody's coming from. I think the focus now shifts obviously to this matchup. And Ohio State, to my way of thinking, I mean, should have a ton of motivation. You have last year's game. You have Dabo Sweeney voting them number 11 in the coaches poll, by far the lowest anybody voted Ohio State. And I'm not even sure why he would do something like that, because or where he had him the week before, or if this has been something where he's always had him outside of his top 10 because they hadn't played enough games, or was holding it against both them and Pac-12 teams. I don't know. I don't know what his voting strategy has been all year, but that was kind of an eye opener. And just his outward comments that a team that didn't play enough games didn't deserve to be there. It's unfortunate. I think Ohio State, if they had their druthers, would have rather played 8 or 9 games themselves, but it just didn't work out that way. And now Ohio State's going into the playoff as it is, 6 games and that's it. So gonna take their shot, and you get one swing, as Ryan Day was quoted after the game. They don't have to beat them 10 times. They don't have to beat them 20 times. They only have to beat them 1 time. And last year's game was virtually a draw. I mean, it was decided on the second to last play of the game, an interception by Ohio State. And a couple bad calls obviously went against the Buckeyes in that game that may have shaped the outcome, and just a couple bad breaks. And honestly, if you really want to go back to it, Ohio State had opportunities in the red zone, didn't cash in, had to kick field goals. Did a great job defensively stopping the traditional run game, the traditional pass game, but had no answer for the quarterback run or the screen passes that Lawrence threw to ATN. Those were the big plays in the game. So if they clean up some of that stuff and maybe get a couple breaks this time, maybe they beat Clemson this go round.
Carson Wood, no full season, no entry. Define full season. I don't know what that is. We had 3 other teams that played 11. Texas A&M said that they deserved to be in. They played 9. So, yeah, the 9 versus 11, 6 versus 9.
There have been no. Go ahead.
They didn't play Florida State. Florida State canceled out on them. Ohio State had teams cancel out on them. They didn't play a full season. So by that logic, Clemson's out too. Hello, Coastal. Hello, Cincinnati. I mean, let's go.
Nobody played 12 games this year, so nobody played an actual full season. So there are no playoffs. I guess it was good. It was a good ride, guys. It was fun regular season. We'll talk to you March for spring football, and then back again in August.
We can talk about a little basketball.
Talk some hoops. Or we can revert.
We got a game today at 4:30, Rutgers.
Let's revert to 1997 and vote. Let's have a vote.
Mark, all you need to do is have the conference championship games. And I know Steve hates it. Have the conference championship games be a playoff, play in. You throw a couple of at-larges in there, as we've talked about in the past, and you leave very little up to the voters or to the committee. And that way, the only complaining you can do is to the fans can only complain to the coaches of their teams, and we can leave these poor committee members who sacrifice so much time away from their families by watching so much football. These poor guys and gals who just take themselves away from their families for hours on end to watch football for the benefit of the fans who don't even appreciate it, Mark. We don't deserve them.
They are the true heroes.
They're the true heroes.
Getting put up at a nice hotel in Grapevine, Texas. Meals, sure, a couple pops, whatever. Probably some neat swag. Those poor SOBs.
I had to watch how many football games this weekend? It's a rough ride. It's just a rough go. Kevin, as you look at the Northwestern game, and you can, just isolate on that, or you can look throughout the entire season, because you made the comment out of the gate, you didn't think Clemson's as good as they were last year, neither Ohio State. So for me with the Buckeyes, it's you lost 2 of the top 3 players to the NFL draft. So these guys are all replaced with 4 and 5 stars. So from a talent perspective, roughly the same, but obviously that's just an evaluation. Chase Young is a difference maker. Jeffrey Okuda, difference maker, elite at their positions. Arguably the best cover corner. I don't think arguably, just flat out the best pass rusher, disruptor in the nation. Gone. J.K. Dobbins, for as good as Trey Sermon was last week, gone. Don't think that he's been replaced. To me, those 3 guys are the difference. Well, and throw in, of course, Jordan Fuller as well. Damon Arnett.
Right.
Well.
Yeah. And I think Ohio State's been getting good production from its interior defensive line, but they certainly lost a lot last year there. But, looking at Clemson right now, Travis Etienne hasn't been Travis Etienne this year. He's had some good games, and he's had some, relatively pedestrian games, but a pedestrian Travis Etienne is is a pretty good back. I mean, but I don't think that they are significantly as explosive as they were in years past. Amari Rogers at receiver, tremendous talent. Powell, he's been stepping up as of late. I think he's been putting up some big numbers. But I think that those two teams last year were, I don't want to say significantly better, but I think from 1 to 22, I think they were better teams. But I think part of it too is just the whole cloud of this season. And I hate keep harping on 6 games for Ohio State. And there certainly was a level of uncertainty for Clemson, and their wheels got shot off midway when they had their COVID tests with Trevor Lawrence and some defensive players or whatnot. So when you're not going through, when you don't wake up each week and go, okay, this is who we're definitely playing on Saturday, which we've done for every year prior in terms of college football. And this year it's just a gigantic crapshoot. You don't have it's hard to build from week to week. And I think that's why this year is just so different than any other year, because you just don't know what you're going to be doing at any given week. And now we're sitting here in the situation where we've already had the College Football Playoff Committee. We've already had Bill Hancock come out and said, if a team or both teams are sick, we're going to hold the game and still play it down the line. We're in that final stretch. We're going to have these games. So, we saw the Gasparilla Bowl go away when South Carolina was sick. We saw Tennessee get bounced out of its game when it got sick. Nothing is for certain right now. So it just creates so much uncertainty. And I think that's why it's been hard for teams to really grow from week to week. Steve,
any thoughts on?
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead. I'll follow you.
Well, yeah, I'm with Kevin on this. The Ohio State losing Damon Arnett, Jeff Okudah, Jordan Fuller, Chase Young. Those are 4 guys who were starting in the NFL before injuries took some of them. And that's the bulk of Ohio State's pass defense. And I include Chase Young in that because he's the start of their pass defense. And so you replace all of those, and there's a significant drop-off in the secondary for Ohio State. And the problem that Ohio State is facing is they haven't gotten to fix it necessarily in game action. They've played a couple of average quarterbacks, and that's also a problem within the Big Ten. They don't get to see great quarterbacks. They get to see one every day in practice, but it's not the same as game action because you know what you're doing. You know the guy you're going against. And so Sevyn Banks, the opposite corner of Shaun Wade, has had his ups and downs, but hasn't been able to become what everybody expected because it's, as Kevin said, it's hard for everybody to do that. Marcus Williamson in the slot has not replaced Shaun Wade. He's had his issues. Marcus Hooker out deep has not replaced Jordan Fuller, and he's had his issues. And as they were starting to make some moves, then they start to lose the weeks. They can't play games, and games get canceled, and so you can't implement the changes that you want. And then when you start to want to implement some stuff, then Josh Proctor is out. And then Josh Proctor comes back and Marcus Hooker is out. And it's really just, who do we have this week? Let's try to play with those guys. It's hard to game plan 2, 3, 4 weeks into the future because you don't know who you're going to have, and you only have the guys around you. And it's hard to get better as a team when the team changes every single week. Now, guys can get better, but it's hard to, as a team, continue to put everything together and gel. And it's like the offensive line, the more games those guys play together, the better they get, they gel. Team needs to gel too, and it's been impossible for Ohio State, and it's been probably almost impossible for everybody else this year.
Yeah. I think Ohio State, the 6 games they played was very good. Was it top 4 good? I don't know. I think their game control, or however that number that they like to reference now and then, was pretty good. It wasn't very good this past week. They trailed for over 30 minutes of clock time in the Northwestern game. They were ahead 3-0, then trailed 7-3 midway through the first quarter, didn't regain the lead until 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. So it was just over 30 minutes that they trailed in this game. And otherwise, though, for the season, they were either tied or trailed only about 40 or 50 minutes out of the previous 5 games, which would be 300 minutes. So, and really big halftime leads. I mean, they had great starts against Nebraska, Penn State, Rutgers, Indiana, and obviously Michigan State. They allowed Penn State, Rutgers, and Indiana to come back on them in the second half, but they never gave up the lead in any of those games. They just made some mistakes, put some younger guys in the game, maybe weren't as aggressive offensively or defensively as they had been in the first half in building the lead. And with a short roster or, guys missing or whatever, maybe it just worked out that way. Or again, trying to play some younger guys when you have a big lead and some mistakes crept in there. So, they were thoroughly dominant in the 6 games that they played. Did they play a lot of great teams? No, not really. I mean, Penn State 4-5, they turned out. Indiana, obviously, just a terrible situation with them. How the AP and the coaches have them around 7 or 8, and the committee puts them in at 11 and doesn't put them in a New Year's Six game is just mind-numbing to me. I don't understand that. Michigan State wasn't very good. So, Northwestern at one point was ranked as high as number 8 before they lost to Michigan State. And, had a great comeback year for them. I mean, they were 3-9 last year. They actually looked like a real football team this year. And really kind of drilling down on that game, I think the one thing that's given a lot of people pause about Ohio State is Justin Fields. He did not play well at all against Northwestern, was really struggling. He didn't have Chris Olave, and I think Garrett Wilson struggled. I think the other wide receivers struggled, and I think Justin Fields struggled. And you could say holding the ball or missing open receivers or nobody was open or guys dropping passes. All that stuff, was a different thing on a different play. It seemed to me that really kind of confounded Justin Fields. But people came away from that game not as excited about Ohio State and Justin Fields. The first time in 20 games, he played kind of a subpar game. And, much worse than Clemson last year or Indiana earlier this year. And those were the only other 2 that really even approached this. So, I think he's got a lot to prove in this game. And he injured his thumb late in the game. We don't know if that's going to impact this game or not. He didn't think it was a serious injury. So, and Ryan Day didn't think it was a serious injury. I think maybe a bigger question is Master Teague. He left the game with, as Ryan Day said, some kind of a sprain, which could be ankle or knee or wrist. I don't know. He took a big tumble on his big run down the middle of the field. He kind of went ass over tea kettles on that, or whatever that saying is, and took a really bad spill and hurt something and didn't play again. But then you put Trey Sermon in the game, and he has 331 yards. My father-in-law, who played college football at Ohio University and knows a little bit about this, said had that been Master Teague, it would have been 400 yards because Sermon, as good as he was still missing some open things and unable with some burst to take full advantage of some of the things that he got. So that'll give you the idea of what one interested observer thought, that Teague would have done much more with what Sermon was given. But me and Sermon had a hell of a game, though. So in a nutshell, I think Ohio State overrated Northwestern's ability to stop the run, didn't even try to run the football, it seemed, early in the game. And when the passing game really bogged down, they went back to the run, and Northwestern could not stop them, despite how great their linebackers may be, how rugged their front four seemed to be in other games. They had no answer for Ohio State's physicality, and that's going to play well for Ohio State, I think, in the playoff.
We talk Ohio State football here each and every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. We got Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop on the line, Steve Hillwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports, and of course Kevin Noon from Rivals Buckeye Grove. We invite you to help us out. We will continue this based on individual contributions. We would love to get a sponsor. If you've got any leads in that direction beyond sending me an email to say Dick's Sporting Goods would be a great sponsor, Mark. Yeah, I don't need more emails like that. I'm pretty up on that side of it. We want some real contacts possibly, and that would be phenomenal to help establish the show here.
Have you thought about like Tesla or McDonald's?
Tesla, yeah.
You should reach out to them.
McDonald's, I've heard of them. Sure, absolutely. I'm sure I could get a just one phone call. Should be able to knock it out there. Not a lot of corporate red tape to go through there. So
Shark Tank, and we can get a shark involved, and then we could get all the money.
there you go. There you go. Trey Sermon. Yeah, I had the same thought, Steve. And this coming from just a guy that watches a lot of football that played at a very, very, very low level. Watching Trey Sermon, because of obviously he's the guy that gets the credit. People are talking Trey Sermon that night. And I'm like, yeah, he ran through holes that were that could, fit a compact car through. But I saw it more as just this offensive line dominance in the run game. And considering what JK was able to do against Clemson last year, I know they're different teams to a certain extent, but maybe they just don't get so pass happy against Clemson. Maybe they really lean Tony on that run game.
I think you got to try that and see if that works, because if that works, then everything else does as well. And then you can do whatever. I don't know how I feel about the Master Teague thing. I think there would have been carries that he would have just been tackled on because he doesn't have the elusiveness of Trey Sermon. And Trey Sermon rushed for 190 some yards after contact. So there is that. But I agree, there were holes where Master Teague would not have been caught, and Trey Sermon was. I think that's the difference between a 4.4 and a 4.65. And I don't know that it will be an issue next year, but because Ohio State's going to have a whole bunch of speed next year, including Master Teague. But yeah, there were runs that Sermon couldn't quite finish, but I will give him credit for getting to that point and getting past some of those defenders, and he did run hard. It's just the gas tank kind of ran out at the end on some of those long runs. And again, I don't know that Master Teague would have been able to make some of those. I know he wouldn't have been able to make some of those same cuts, but if he would have had 29 carries with that offensive line, I think anybody is going to – it seems crazy to say, but maybe anybody would have rushed for 300 yards that day and set an Ohio State record with how those guys just dominated and opened up just entire from hash to hash.
I was going to say with Teague, I think Teague's acceleration would have finished off some of those runs, but I think Sermon's balance is a little bit better. And there were some times where I think Teague probably would have not been able to regain his balance. And I'm really going to that last Sermon run to set up where they weren't able to punch it in at the end of the game. And there were 2 or 3 times where a mere mortal would have gone to the ground. I would have torn both my ACLs, but Sermon was able to keep going. So I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But yeah, I think that the 4 of us could have at least rushed for 80 yards in that game. The 4 of us.
He
20 each.
He had 7 carries for 60 yards in the first half, and I just counted it up. 22 carries for 271, an average of 12.3 yards per carry in the second half. 22 carries for 271 yards. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody have that many yards in a half. That's pretty impressive, I have to say. That was when they needed him the most, he brought it. And they really needed every one of those yards to put that game away. Northwestern made them earn everything they got. And, Northwestern had they in the second half, they turned it over 3 times. 2 interceptions and a fumble by Peyton Ramsey. They're in position to win this game. It was not Ohio State dominating this game by any stretch of the imagination. And, every time they went 7 possessions trailing until they finally regained the lead late in the third quarter. They kept shooting themselves in the foot time after time after time, and just could not put the ball in the end zone until finally they were able to regain the lead late in the third quarter. So, in everybody's life, there needs to be some adversity, and I think some great lessons were learned, I think, from that game. Better to learn those lessons in victory than in defeat. Had they lost the game, we'd probably be going back out to the Fiesta Bowl for the 19th time. But instead, it's going to be the playoffs, so that's good.
Got 150 on the line. Appreciate everyone jumping on here. We've asked for questions, Steve and I, so we will honor those. Somebody was chiming in with something. Tony, you got something?
Well, I just think they only scored 22 points on 399 yards rushing, which still astonishes me that the game was close when the running game was not. And that gets back, I guess, to coaching and not just rolling with that. And that's why when I said earlier, like, why not try to do that against Clemson? Because if that works, then that also runs the clock and keeps your defense off the field, keeps Trevor Lawrence over on the sideline where he can do no good, and keeps him from running all over the defense like he did a year ago.
Yeah, at some point in the third quarter, I sent out a tweet. Ohio State, 6 points, no touchdowns. Sermon was at 10 rushes for $150, and Teague was at like 2 for 23. So they had a combined 12 for 173. How is this possible?
Terrible red zoning.
Yeah,
Red zoning. They were so bad inside the 30-yard line. Now, some people consider red zone 20. I think a couple of those first half possessions where they settled, I don't know that they ever made it to the 20-yard line, but scoring position nonetheless, inside the 30 on each of these. 4 trips inside the 30, and they came away with 6 points, I think, out of that in the first half, I think, because they threw the red zone interception on one of the last plays of the half. And they'd gone for it on 4th down and didn't get it, I think, down there. So, and 2 field goals. So, yeah, it was UGLY. A lot of side to side, but not enough north and south, it didn't seem like.
I mean, you had the Harry Miller hold that took the
yes.
touchdown off of there, and then that drive ended they had to go for the field goal because on 3rd down, Fields got sacked and nearly knocked him out of field goal range at that point. Just a lot of that kind of stuff that happened there where, we're not back in the days of where there were, 10 false starts in this game, but, there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds. And, a lot of it too, though, you have to put on the credit of Northwestern and the Mike Hankwitz defense. And, Northwestern had probably the best look of linebackers that Ohio State potentially could face. I mean, honestly, you give me Fisher, Bergen, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Gallagher.
Yep.
Yeah, you give me those 3. Those guys, they're not going to sit there and absolutely flash, but they bring it every play and they don't screw up.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's first 6 scoring opportunities netted them 9 points, and so that's no good, and is even worse than they did against Clemson last year. And we'll obviously have to do better than that. Do better than they did against Clemson last year in the red zone. You can't settle for field goals. Got to punch it in there, and that's something that you would think that they would be good at with Justin Fields being able to run and throw. It's something they'll have to get better at in this game, or else, good luck.
Yeah, 6 opportunities. Let's say you come up empty once, you score 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals, you're at 27 points. That's pretty reasonable. A dog named Brutus. I don't know that we necessarily need to go around Robin on all these questions, but whoever wants to pick this one up, he's just basically asking the question about during the BCS era of 98 through 2013, was there more parity in college football?
I don't know if there's more parity. I think the top 6 teams just they fluctuate, and Tennessee was in there, and now they're not. They've been replaced by Clemson. It just I don't know what's the largest group of championship caliber teams there are per year. Does it stay roughly like 5, 6 every year?
But I think that's the point, Tony. It's not rotating.
But like Clemson comes in and Florida State goes out, or Tennessee goes out and Ohio State comes in.
It used to be the SEC East, and now it's the SEC West, although Georgia, I guess, did make a championship game. But
I don't know that we've seen 6 years like the last 6 years where if we polled everyone here in August and said who's going to make the playoffs, 80% of the people would have said Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then the other would have been somebody else.
There's a little less fluctuation, I think, but I don't think any of us would have put Texas A&M as being a team that was in there in the mix or anything else like that. I think it's pretty similar, but it comes down to that you kind of have I think your dynasties are a little bit more defined right now. I mean, you know, just put Alabama, just put Clemson, just put Ohio State in there. You know, Notre Dame seems to be, you know, every, you know, a good couple of years and maybe meh. You know, it's, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I would say that we've seen drastic changes whatsoever. I think it's become much more regionalized in terms of, do any of us ever think that there's anybody from west of the Rockies that's going to be significant? Because I don't.
No.
I think also, Mark, during the BCS era, it's just two teams vying for the championship. And if you take those two teams and it just fluctuates between four teams, then there's variety. When it's the same four teams and a four team, there's less variety, even though there are more teams. And so if you take, you know, 1 year it's LSU and Clemson, the next year it's Alabama and Clemson, the next year it's Ohio State and Alabama, that seems different because it's just two teams pulling from a pool of 5 or 6, whereas now it's a pool of 4 teams pulling from a pool of 5 or 6, and it just all looks very familiar because we've seen all of these teams before.
If we went back to the 80s and we took a 6-year stretch, you know, can you imagine and considered national championship contention to be with 2 weeks left, you've got a loss. You are in the mix to get to a national championship type situation. Of course, there wasn't a game, but the likes of Iowa, Illinois, Georgia Tech, Colorado being legitimately in national championship races now.
But Iowa was in that situation in 2015. If they beat Michigan State, they're going. You know, they were both undefeated.
But it seems like they did.
Iowa had maybe one loss. But yeah,
they were undefeated. Yep.
The chasm between the haves and the have-nots are getting bigger, though, and it's going to get harder for people to crash the party. I mean, you're going to have that generational type of player to be able to throw the team on his shoulders and carry them across the finish line, because you sit there and you look at your top 6 teams in terms of recruiting, and that's not really changing from year to year. And we know that it's the Jimmy and the Joes means so much in this type of situation. So it's going to be a lot harder. And I think it's just going to be a situation that it's going to take, I don't know, it's going to take a sudden resignation, a scandal, or something at one of these programs for them to really fall out.
And I see talk where, you know, these teams would need a Zach Wilson, or not an NFL type top pick quarterback like a Zach Wilson. But of course, you know, BYU has lost, and I don't know that they would have been in the top 4 had they been undefeated anyway. And we know from the UCF stuff and the Boise State stuff where you're supposed to put it together 2 years in a row, and that way you can get a better footing in the second year. And this committee is, I find it very hard to believe that they would have put Cincinnati in at 13-0 with everybody else being where they were, and it's unfortunate. And you know, I guess the type of quarterback or type of players, you need so much hype. You need to end up the season having won your bowl game by beating somebody that maybe you shouldn't have. So maybe Cincinnati can get that with the Georgia win and then go undefeated next year, and maybe they can get it. But it's just unfortunate that you to make it 1 year, you have to be perfect 2 years, and that's the case for nobody else other than the group of 5 teams.
Mookie Cooper, we hardly knew you. Benjamin and others are asking about Mookie Cooper moving on in the transfer portal.
It would have been nice for him if he would have gotten involved in special teams, and he wasn't. And honestly, that's your path to the field. I think you expect that in terms of your skill position guys to wet their beak a little bit on special units. And I went over to PFF and looked at Pro Football Focus and looked at their snap counts. Nothing on special teams for Mookie. Ohio State puts together an incredible receiver recruiting class last year with the 4 receivers that it brought in. It's following it up with another great receiver class. There's just not really much opportunity. And if you can't seize something immediately, you might be best looking for another position. Plus 2, we're not really seeing the Urban Meyer H position that never was the same thing twice being utilized. And we were talking about that a little bit off air before we started doing this. So yeah, best of luck at the next stop. Maybe he goes to Illinois. Maybe he goes and plays for Brett Bielema over there, because I know Illinois was a team. He's a St. Louis area kid. It would make a lot of sense.
There's a reason why Ryan Day said that he's not concerned about being over the 85 scholarship limit, with everybody still having that extra year of eligibility this year, because he knows guys are going to go off to the NFL and guys are going to transfer, especially with the first transfer being free this year and moving forward. And it's unfortunate because they use that slot receiver a lot, and they'll use 2 slot receivers a lot. But I think he sees Jackson Smith and Jigba getting the bulk of those snaps next year, and where are the snaps for him? And he's a guy that also transferred in high school, and he's been out for a while, and so he will be able to start next year somewhere as a true freshman again, and hopefully he gets some footing. But yeah, as Kevin said, if you're not making a mark on special teams, and he knows he isn't, and he's not getting any run there, they really don't have, I don't want to be blunt, but they don't have any use for you if you can't first do it on special teams. And if you're not, as they say, if I can't trust you on special teams, how can I trust you on offense or defense? And that's where he is right now. So maybe he's just looking for a clean start.
Kevin, did you mention Brett Bielema?
I did. I can't wait.
Let's do some Illinois talk. What do you guys feel about that? Brett Bielema, I didn't really lose track of him. I did see that he was on the Giants staff, before that the Patriots staff, but he hadn't really been surfacing as a name that was in the media, at least for some of these coaching vacancies. And then all of a sudden, boom, and it makes sense to me. Seems like a decent hire. We'll start with you, Kevin.
It'll be interesting. We'll see. You go to the league for a couple of years into a lesser role. Do you come right back into collegiate coaching, head coaching, as hungry as you were at one day? I did have the opportunity to watch a little bit of his introductory press conference on Big Ten Network, and he did talk about being a little full of himself and believing that he hung the sun, the moon, and the stars as a young coach. Is he going to have that same fire, or is it going to be kind of a, well, I'm here and I'm going to show up, and gosh darn it, let's all have a good exercise out there? And if that's the case, he won't be there very long. But I'll hold judgment until I see what kind of staff he's able to put together around him. If it's a bunch of retreads, you know what, you should probably not take too much of your stuff out of the moving boxes. If he has a nice mixture of elder and younger coaches, maybe they can do something. But I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm a Bielema believer. I mean, he did win 3 Big Ten championships. He was kind of handed a machinery there by Barry Alvarez in the mid-2000s, about 2005 or so, when Barry Alvarez retired and became the athletic director, and was really given the keys to something very special up there. And they just reeled off, 1 10 or 11 year win season after another. And I don't know if he felt that he was being disrespected or not taken care of, but that SEC lure got him, that, maybe if he's butting his head up against Ohio State every year. Of course, he went to Arkansas, about the time Alabama was ascending to the top of the sport, and got there at the wrong time, obviously. And they went through some terrible seasons with him as the head coach. They couldn't get anywhere. It's all about recruiting down there. You've got to get great players from across that SEC footprint. I'm not sure Arkansas is going to produce enough great talent for you to win just with players from Arkansas. I mean, KJ Hill was one of the great players from Arkansas, came to Ohio State as an example. So you got to keep the best players at home. And, he knows the footprint. He's from Illinois originally, went to college at Iowa, and coached at Wisconsin. So he knows those 3 states very well. When he was at Wisconsin, he recruited Ohio pretty well. He'll probably be obviously needs to make it happen in Chicagoland. That's fertile ground to go in and get some great talent year in and year out, and players that Northwestern probably can't take because of academics. He can certainly take at Illinois. So, the West to me is wide open for the taking. There's not a invincible force out there. Minnesota has come on and done some nice things here in the last 3 years with PJ Fleck to kind of shake things up. Purdue looks like they are trying to get a little better. Nebraska, everyone's wondering why they haven't gotten any better because they keep losing games. They should win, which is crazy. Wisconsin had the 2 or I guess 3 straight losses this year, which made no sense, where they couldn't even get a first down in a couple of them. And so it's wide open. It's there for the taking. Northwestern is not going to be consistently at that level, I don't think. Iowa, had the issues to start the season off the field, lost their first 2 games, and then were dominant after that. So it's there. I mean, if anybody can go in there and shake things up, I think it's Brett Bielema. And, he's going to have to resurrect a recruiting class here in the next 6 weeks or thereabouts till February and get some aftermarket guys who didn't sign other places. I'm sure they're scouring the Midwest for available talent, probably going to raid some MAC schools for some of their better signees just to get some warm bodies in there, and probably beg some of the guys who have an extra year of eligibility who weren't thinking about coming back to use that at Illinois next year as well. Could be a thing to get a 5th or 6th year senior to stick around for another year just for the fun of it and help us, get this thing going the right direction. But Lovey got them to a bowl game, so they got some okay players. It's just Lovey just couldn't put it all together, and so we'll see. I'm interested. I'm optimistic about what he can do. I find it to be a very good hire, given his Big Ten pedigree. He's won 3 Big Ten championships, so to me, he's coached in the Rose Bowl. I don't know, who you're going to get other than maybe a Matt Campbell. Which I think Iowa State to Illinois is a backward move. I don't know who you'd get. So, to me, I think they hit a home run with this one.
Well, in terms of who they get, they've already done the MAC route with Tim Beckman, and that didn't work. But I don't think that eliminates all of the other quality MAC coaches that they could have gotten or other MAC coaches. Lovey was a hire because he was a name and from the area, and there was some familiarity with him, but he hadn't coached in college in forever. Brett at least has punched his Big Ten West card. He has 3 holes punched on it now. And, once you get all 7 punched, then I believe you get a free slab of bacon or something like that. And so we'll see if he can eventually get to Purdue and Northwestern, maybe coach Nebraska, and I don't know, take some graduate courses at Minnesota, and just cover all of his Big Ten West bases. But I agree with Steve. I think, and I've said this before, any of these 7 Big Ten West programs can win the Big Ten West and go to a Big Ten championship game because there is no dominant team. And there's no program that is so bad that they can't compete. And we've seen it fluctuates each year. It all depends on when the quarterback is a senior, like just in terms of everybody coming together and the right roster being put together. And you've got veterans at the right time, and you've got the right schedule, and you've got the right crossover opponents in the Big Ten East where this week, this season you've got Maryland and Rutgers instead of Ohio State and Penn State. Something like that also helps. I think what helped Ron Zook was having Mike Loxley and allowed him to recruit. They don't have that, and I think you need that. But there's talent in the state. You just got to keep it home. But I don't know that Bielema has ever been a great recruiter. But also, I don't think you need to be a great recruiter to win in the West. You just need to be a great developer, a great coach, and just stay consistent. And that was, he took over Wisconsin when they had been consistent for about 12 years or so, and that's not what he's got now. So can he build something? That'll be interesting to watch.
I remember getting texts from friends going back to the Northwestern game because there were some questions concerning the wide receiver play in helping out Justin Fields or not helping him out. And of course, Chris Olave was the name at the top of the list in regards to guys that missed the game. But in regards to a positional unit, my thought was, okay, if they're going to take a hit at a positional unit, that's the one to take it. Olave's great, but it's deep, it's talented, etc. Maybe they missed him more than at least I thought they were. But our guy Vinay in the chat mentions Jameson Williams, who ran the wrong route on one of the picks from Justin Fields after they had run. Talk about the running game. I think they ripped off like 28 yards on 2 carries. Then they're throwing the ball. Fields throws the pick. Williams runs the wrong way. I don't necessarily know if there were multiple communication errors, but you guys can pick up on that. Tony, first, just in regards to that issue last week.
Well, I mean, that was a really bizarre route and throw on that one, because Jameson didn't have any more room to run other than a couple of feet, and the ball wasn't there yet. So it's like, well, the ball's not going to get here, so maybe I cut up. But it was pretty surprising how much he missed Chris Olave, and how much it delayed all of his entire thought process, and the lack of trust that he must have for other players. And then maybe that's why the throw to Jameson Williams was late. Maybe that's why or maybe it's something that Jameson did that's why there's not quite the trust that he has. And he's got this communication ability and this connection with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave that he doesn't have with other people. I saw Jameson Williams get really frustrated during that game. He was he was on the other side of the field, wide open, just in the flats as an outlet, and Fields forced it to somebody for an incompletion, and he was just begging for the ball, and one of the coaches had to settle him down. And you see they went to him right away to start the game, but it was a bad throw out of bounds, and it's then you only get to see him seemingly on various, or not various, but just this random check down when he's a third or fourth option. And he does a lot of different things for the offense, for the passing offense, in terms of clearing out the defense and things like that. I think he could do more with the passing game, but that's up to Justin Fields to get him the ball. It's also up to Jameson Williams to make sure he's doing the right things, and the timing of the routes, and snapping the routes, and just doing everything that Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are doing. And the things those two guys do is they get open, and Justin throws him the ball, so he doesn't need to look for the third or fourth option because the first two are open.
Anything on that, Steve?
Yeah, I touched on a little bit earlier. I think the protection was pretty good. I wrote down coverage sack. I think he got sacked 3 times in the first half, and I think coverage on a couple of them. Maybe there was a breakdown on one of them, but by the offensive line. But you're not going to block him perfectly every time. And again, Northwestern had one of the top 20 rated defenses in the country. Now, I think when we were on the show last week, I ticked off all the terrible teams that they played. They played 5 of the worst offenses in the country in building those spiffy numbers. But, it took Ohio State a while to get a good plan in place. And I agree. I think Olave is just so good, so polished, makes the quarterback look 10 times better than he really is because of his route running and his precision and his catching ability and everything that he brings. He is so polished now in his 3rd year that he really makes the quarterback look a lot better. As you look at the stats going into this game, I kind of update a file on our site every week before the game, and you notice that Wilson and Olave were both over 20 catches for the year, and nobody else even had 10. And that really is kind of top heavy after 5 weeks, that nobody else on the team has averaged as few as 2 catches a game. That'll just tell you. And then you take one of those 2 guys out, there's going to be a big problem. And that's what happened. As we saw, his security blanket was gone, and they had a great corner. I want to say Brandon Phillips, but he played second base for the Reds. The kid with the 6 picks on the season, got his 6th pick against Ohio State, covering Garrett Wilson. Yeah, the ball was underthrown on the fade in the end zone, and the kid reached up, made a great play, and took it away from Wilson. I mean, tip your cap to them. Great play by them, but I think that kid and whoever else they had did the best they could to erase Wilson. He was targeted 10 times and caught 4 passes. I don't know what the ratio, I don't follow the NFL quite that close to what I know that used to be or became a big stat in the NFL. Now they've kind of brought it down to college. I would think if you're targeted 6 times, you should catch 4 passes. I would think maybe 7. I don't know. What's a good ratio? I don't think 10 targets and 4 catches is a very good ratio.
You pretty much go along with completion percentage, I would think, to a certain extent, even though the downfield guys are going to get longer throws that are going to be completed less than the checkdowns, but still roughly 65%, I would think would be a good good, decent number there.
He had a
deep ball
drop.
50-50 for a reason, right?
Yeah. When you throw the football, three things can happen, and as Woody said, two of them are bad. So
Can't be doing that. Yeah.
you can't do it. If you got to do it, do it. But really rather not doing it. And I think Ohio State fans on Twitter and on our message boards, I'm sure on Tony's message board, were just, livid with the red zone play calling. They were up in arms about what they were seeing and didn't like it, and had run the football down the field on one of those possessions and then tried to throw it in the red zone, and there were no windows open, nothing available, and I don't know, didn't get the ball to the tight end one time. I mean, you got Jeremy Ruckert, who caught a highlight reel pass in that game at that field last year, and you would have thought would have been a good matchup, but did not materialize, didn't catch a pass. Farrell didn't catch a pass. So, they left a lot of points out on the field. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
If only we could have College Football Nation vote before each play as to whether this is a good play call or not, and not just of course, if it doesn't work, it's not a good play call.
67% of America says this one's going to fail. Yeah. I don't know. There's too much side to side in this game. They asked him to throw a backward pass to Garrett Wilson, and it was fumbled. And it's like, what the hell are you trying to do? Is Garrett Wilson going to throw a pass then? I mean, he caught it, tried to catch it 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage and fumbled it and, almost turned it over back there screwing around 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's like, come on, guys. They threw the flanker screen out to the side a couple times. It got blown up for losses. It just, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know. Not enough north-south. I said it earlier. And too much east-west.
Yeah, and the best time to throw the ball is when they can't stop the run. But when you're throwing it laterally, I don't know. I think that is not exactly the type of throwing we're talking about.
No crossing routes. I mean, Wilson is awesome on the crossing routes. Where were those? You missed Smith-Njigba too. He's played at least a little bit. Apparently, G. Scott must not be ready. Jamison Williams, to me, I'm waiting to see it. I haven't seen it. He's played a ton of snaps in 3 wide receiver sets, and rarely, he didn't even have 10 catches. I mean,
I think we saw more from Julian Fleming in
this one game than we had out of Williams the whole rest of the season.
All right. Appreciate a super chat coming in here from
Alakazam.
Yes, Alakazam. Thank you. I think I mispronounced that the other week. I was like looking at it like it was Alaska something.
Alaska Sam.
Alaska Sam. Oh, good luck from a Clemson fan. Go easy on us. Not any tongue-in-cheek there, of course. But we appreciate the contribution there.
No quarter asked, none given in this game, I think.
Steve Hellwagon's in the middle from Bucknuts. Check out his work there at 247 Sports. Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop. We appreciate these guys as well as Kevin Noon providing all this insight into Ohio State football each and every week. And hope all of you will join us back here next week. Keep that bell ringing for the notifications, and you'll know when we're going live with Ohio State Buckeyes live. Guys, have a great holiday. Merry Christmas, and hopefully we'll get back next week.
Yep.
You too. Thank you.
Yep. Happy holidays.